Branding and public chaining, 1st century BCE, 1st century CE. In ancient Rome, running away was not just an escape. It was seen as a crime against the entire Roman order. If a slave woman tried to flee, her punishment was cruel and public. One of the first things done to her was branding. She would be held down while a hot iron was pressed into her forehead. The iron often marked her with the letters FVG, which stood for fugitive, meaning fugitive. Sometimes a longer sentence like Tenio te fugitive, I hold you, fugitive, was burned into her skin. This was not just painful, it was meant to shame her for life. Once branded, she could never hide her past. Her scar told everyone she had tried to escape. In Roman society, a woman's face was very important. Having a scar on it meant she was no longer respected, even among other slaves. The branding was done publicly so that others could watch and learn. People would shout at her, beat her, and treat her like an object. For Roman citizens, this was a message: no one could defy the rules without suffering. Another cruel punishment was chaining a woman to the front gate of the house, a practice called ad januum in Latin. This meant she became part of the building itself. She was tied to a post or a wall near the front door, exposed to everyone who passed by. She was left there for hours or even days, with little food, no protection from the sun or rain, and sometimes with her clothes partly removed. This was done to humiliate her further. In Roman culture, it was shameful for a woman to be exposed in public. Being chained at the gate destroyed whatever little dignity she had left. Roman writers like Plautus joked about such punishments, but the reality was harsh. These women were suffering in silence, turned into warnings for other slaves. Their pain became part of daily Roman life. The punishments were not just about control, they were about fear. Rome made sure every act of resistance was punished in a way that everyone could see and remember. Arena executions, 1st century CE, 2nd century CE. For some women, things became even worse. If a slave woman tried to escape more than once, or if her master wanted to make an example of her, she might be thrown into the arena. This was a place where people came to watch others suffer and die. The punishment was called damnatio ad bestias, meaning condemnation to the beasts. The woman would be brought into the arena, often naked and chained. Then wild animals like lions, leopards, or bears were released to attack her. The crowd would cheer as she was killed. She was not given weapons or training. She was not there to fight. She was there to die. Sometimes, these women were made to act in fake plays where they were burned, stabbed, or attacked as part of a show. Roman people loved these events. They brought their families to watch. They laughed and clapped as the women died. Even children watched these horrible punishments. The women in the arena were seen as less than human. They were used to entertain others and to send a message. Slaves belong to their masters, and running away brings death. Writers like Suetonius and Cassius Dio wrote about women in the arena. They usually mentioned rich women, but records show that enslaved women were also used in these cruel shows. These deaths were not quick or private. They were slow, painful, and very public. Everyone in Rome knew that the arena was a place where the lowest people were punished in the worst ways. For a slave woman, being sent there meant complete destruction, not just of her body, but of her identity. She died with people laughing at her suffering. This was how Rome kept its power, by turning human pain into entertainment. Whipping and death in the mines, 2nd century CE, 3rd century CE. Another common punishment for escaped slave women was whipping. The Romans used a special whip called a flagrum. It had many leather cords with metal or bone at the ends. This made the whip tear skin and muscle. When a woman tried to escape, her master could whip her as much as he wanted. There were no rules or limits. Sometimes she was whipped inside the house. Other times it happened in the market, where other slaves could watch. The master wanted to show everyone what happened to those who tried to run. The woman's clothes would be soaked in blood. She might scream, faint, or collapse. But the beating would continue. This was not just about pain. It was about showing power. Roman society believed that slaves had no rights. If a slave woman disobeyed, she had to be punished hard. Writers like Horace and Juvenal joked about beatings, but it was a normal part of life. After the whipping, the woman might also be branded or chained. But sometimes, the punishment didn't stop there. If the woman ran away again, she could be sent to the mines. This was called damnatio in medullum, condemnation to the mines. It was a slow, painful death sentence. The mines in places like Sardinia and Dacia were horrible. They were deep underground, with bad air and little light. The workers had no rest, no food, and no protection. Women were forced to carry heavy stones, break rocks, and breathe dust all day. Many died from hunger, injuries, or sickness. There was no escape. Some women even gave birth in the mines. Their babies usually died quickly. No one cared. These women were erased from the world. No one saw them again. Rome used these punishments to keep order. The branding, the chaining, the arena, the whip, and the mines were all part of a system that ruled through fear. For slave women, every act of resistance was met with violence. They were punished not just for what they did, but for daring to hope for freedom. Their pain is a part of history that must not be forgotten. The Roman Empire looked strong on the outside, but it was built on cruelty and suffering. These women's stories remind us that behind every empire are those who were crushed to keep it standing. You've just witnessed one of the darkest punishments in history. But many more still lurk in the shadows. So if you dare, subscribe to Torture Vault, where every scream from the past still echoes.